Are you tired of playing small and ready to step confidently into your greatness and share your unique brilliance with the world? Well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sabine, and I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to empowering individuals and leaders as they confidently navigate the twists and turns of life and career transitions. If you're seeking direction, connection, or just a little push to play bigger, consider this podcast your VIP pass to a community that genuinely understands your journey. Join me every week for candid conversations and practical guidance designed to help you navigate the challenges of life and business, foster a growth mindset, and cultivate meaningful connections. It's time to embrace your inherent power, define your unique purpose, and prosper in every aspect of your life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Power of Money series. I am your host, Sabine Gideon. I'm excited to have Briana Franklin here as our guest. Real quick, Briana Bree is a businesswoman, philanthropist, and student debt expert and thought leader with a passion for socioeconomic and holistic empowerment for Black girls and women. Having taken on a financial burden of nearly $120,000 in student debt through her undergraduate studies, Bree has developed an acute appreciation for the challenges many student debt holders experience. She has formed the Prosperity Project as a solution for eradicating these systemic barriers. With that, welcome to the show, Briana. So excited to dig in and have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you for the warm intro. It's so awesome to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, this Power of Money series is really birthed out of the need throughout all sectors of society, right? As we look at, what's happening in the market, we look at what's happening in leadership, and we look at where the biggest financial disparities lie. And it's with women, and certainly women of color. And you can, drill down even further with those demographics. And so this series is really meant to empower women to not only, talk about money, because that's a huge barrier for us, but to really gain some tools and some practical knowledge around what does it look like to be financially empowered? What does it look like to, leverage the income or the resources that we do have to maximize it, to grow it beyond just our day-to-day needs? But what does that look like in impacting our communities, impacting the generations behind us? And so you are at a pivotal point in the series where you're now talking about not only some of the financial decisions that perhaps we had to make in previous parts of our lives, but how even these decisions, these financial decisions that we've had to make when we were younger or adolescents have impacted or, continue to impact us even in our adulthood. So before I get into the juiciness here, I would love for you to walk us through your journey and, what really inspired you and provoked you to create this project and how you're leveraging it today to support women.
So I just want to say I really adore your use of the word provoke, because I think when people often ask me that, they're like, what made you get started or what led you to this? And it was being provoked. It was a very, a rough patch in my life and a very major instance of turning lemons into lemonade. So I graduated from undergrad. Most people don't believe me when I say it because I have a baby face, but 6 years ago. And leading up to that, so, my whole backstory is I was the first in my family to go Ivy League. So I grew up hearing things because I was a straight A principals list honor roll student. You get the picture. People are like, oh, you've got to go to an Ivy League school, and basically sending the message that if I didn't get a degree like that, I was falling short of my potential. So I was very intentional about trying to get into one. So I ended up choosing Dartmouth. And while I was there, I had silently racked up about $100,000 in student debt principal. And mind you, I have no idea about that because the paperwork is so nebulous, and it's just, just sign here, take this very mundane quiz, just so we can say we've done our job technically to inform you of what you're doing. And then, so I let that debt accumulate, and then I came out, because of the grace period. You don't really have to think about it or worry about it too much. But then it just like smacked me upside the head about 2 years later, once the interest set in, especially on the private loans. And it came out to about $16,000 of interest on top of that 100K. So I was, close to $120,000. I felt like I was being strangled to death, honestly, by that debt. And going back to why it was an instance of being provoked, I mean, I don't know if anyone listening has ever experienced being late, but I mean, they go to no end to get their money. And so just being hounded and harassed by Sally Mae, just by the loan companies, and then having other types of debt that I had racked up too, just through my ignorance of money. I was in a really tight spot. And this was like summer 2019. And I had fallen so behind on my loans that my credit dropped 120 points overnight, somewhere between 120 and 150 points. And I was no longer credit worthy as far as most lenders are concerned. So out the window went getting an apartment, being able to refinance my car loan, all of those things. So I just remember my dad also sent me an email, and he was very passionate, to say the least, because he was a co-signer on those loans. And he was, like, this hurts my chances of refinancing my home and all these other things. So I just remember saying, I'm not even going to get defensive because he's totally right. I'm going to take back control and I want my life back. And I remember I rolled up my sleeves and I just got 2 part-time jobs just to get money coming in like within the week. And then that carried me through the last days of life as we knew it. So March 2020, and then a global pandemic emerged among us. And then I felt like I was back to square one, unemployed all over again, and just continuously having to figure that out. So in summer of that year, when George Floyd and Black Lives Matter erupted, it was really an instance of, I thought to myself before that happened, I was like, I have too much going for myself. I have too much to offer the world to not have anything happening for me right now, to not have any, income, to not be doing anything productive or meaningful with my time. And I had been reading entrepreneurship books leading up to that as well. And it was just sort of like one of those gut instincts where no one really outright says to do it, but you just follow that direction. And then I leaned on those foundations and got to work. And then one thing led to another, and I ran a survey. That data came in, and I was like, I think I have the makings of starting a nonprofit. And then it just all snowballed from there into what it is today.
Ah, what an amazing story. And oh my gosh, I can feel the impact, especially well, it's been a few more than 6 years for me. But certainly those first few years of like, how do you balance, what's supposed to be, they sold you this like 100K salary when you get out of school, lies. When you're trying to balance adulting and figuring life on your own, and you have these bills that you accumulated and trying to navigate that. And so I'm so happy to hear that while it was triggering in many ways, you didn't take the route of being defeated, that you decided to take action. So tell us about the organization now and who you work with and how you support others who are in the same place or close to that same place to get out.
Yeah. So I guess the best way to encapsulate that is sharing our mission. So Prosperity Project's mission is to completely eradicate, yes, I said it, the now $2 trillion student debt / predatory lending crisis, as well as close the racial wealth gap for Black women once and for all. And I take that charge very personally because I think that there's so many bad actors at play. And, the issues that we see on both fronts are the result of a lot of intentional, just greed and exploitation. So our organization really prides itself on being an innovator, and that, for our initiatives, like our 2 main programs, we have 35 to Free, our flagship, and that gets its name from the $35 billion in student debt, as well as 35% rate of financial literacy that Black women hold collectively. So that's our program that we hit the ground running with, but then we've also expanded into preventative work through HIRE, which is an acronym, HIRE, versus higher, as in higher education, where we help high schoolers avoid, like high schoolers of all race and gender backgrounds, avoid it to begin with. And so we really, through both of those programs, are innovating because a lot of similar entities will just enable a broken system, right? Like we see so much conversation with high schoolers around, well, college is expensive. And people talk about it as though, well, it's hurricane season. What can you do if you live in Florida, right? And we're like, no, just telling people to get more scholarships to keep up with these crazy high tuition rates is not the answer. We need to be taking a step back and asking, does college even make sense for every child? And the answer is absolutely a resounding no. And then for those it does make sense for, as in will make them directly more employable and lead to more profits, how can we equip them with the awareness and the skills to be able to navigate the financial piece if they can't write a check, if the parents don't have it like that, and they will need to borrow to make it happen. 35 to free is innovating in the way that we're not simply just paying down the student debt of Black women. Like that is one of the aspects that I'm proudest of, because I think everyone tries to tiptoe around that and they're like, refinance, consolidate, get a personal loan, and they just want to dance around it and not actually get it out the way. But we're like, no, we're going to help you actually get this out the way. But it goes beyond that because we're also arming our prosperettes, the Black women who go through the program, with financial guidance. Because if you don't have that piece, then what can happen is the lottery winner effect, where, you read about, I think it's a third or two thirds. Sorry, I'm not clear on the stat, but it's a significant chunk of lottery winners who go broke because they don't have a management plan for their earnings. And then also, we don't want to create a codependency effect where they're like, well, I was leaning on y'all to get out of debt. Now that I'm out of the program, what do I do? Like, we're building them up so that they can far exceed what we do for them as they continue to make more money and go through their careers. So all that's to say, like we try to be very cutting edge in our solutions so that we're making lasting change and not just putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love all of that. And so we know that especially within the last few years that Black women in particular are like the most educated demographic, but no one's really talking about, well, how much did it cost them?
Yep.
Similar to you, I'm first generation everything. And so my family did not have the resources. And so my only understanding of how I could make it possible was to take on all of these student loans that, again, to this day, I'm still paying off. And so it's almost like this dream that we're sold of what, is the American dream or what is the way to get ahead in society. But the details around the cost of that dream are often hidden from those who are the ones pursuing it. So I love the fact that you are, not only just helping and supporting people who have gotten in that bind today, but really trying to prevent it in those who are transitioning from, high school into college. I was reading this book and it was actually through a former like financial advisor. And we have, first of all, the financial literacy, and we're just coming out of financial literacy month, but the percentage of financial literacy is low across all demographics as it is. But for so many years, there's been a focus on financial literacy versus financial efficacy, because, the truth of the matter is there are financial advisors, there are people who are in this space who can manage money or who know about money or who can make money. But at the same time, they are ignorant in terms of like how it really works and what the difference is between making money and being able to build money that builds wealth, that builds something that's greater. And so it sounds like you're crossing the line from, you're still supporting in the financial literacy aspect, but you're also moving into let's help you be effective so that you're not ignorant to how money works overall and beyond just how to make money. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, that nails it, because we want to make sure that we're planting seeds so that it's a lingering effect sort of deal, and that, the best is yet to come for our prosperettes, and also for the high schoolers that we've engaged with, because I know that from my experience, my parents, they did the best they could with what they had. So I don't hold any, shame or animosity over them, because they were working with what they had. And that goes all the way back, by the generation. But it's like at some point that cycle has to be broken if we're going to level up, like as a culture, as a community. But then to your point too, I think like just across the different intersectionalities of race and gender, it's pretty bad overall because I think what we saw really coming out of, like the once we hit the industrialization period and like just leading up to modern society, it was like these things didn't need to be outright taught because number one, there weren't these massive perils of predatory lending in this way. And also it was just like, okay, you could scrape 2 cents together and, invest that. And then, just the barriers to entry were so much lower back then. Inflation wasn't even a thing 100+ years ago. So it's like with the times changing, we have to catch up and we're trying to catch young people up because now it's like you can certainly wade your way into debt, but you cannot wade your way out, at least to a certain level. I mean, maybe if you're talking 5 grand, okay. But at the crippling, crushing amounts that so many people are graduating with, it's like people are saying, well, I guess I'm just never going to own a home. I guess I'm never going to be able to start a family, get married, travel, do anything I love because I'm enslaved to this lender for the rest of the foreseeable future. So we definitely want to just like shatter that whole precedent that's now been set and do the grunt work that's required to start leveling the playing field again.
Yeah, yeah. You made me remember I had a doctor on my show, and she had shared that she came out of school with $400,000 worth of debt. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you never think about that because you just assume that certain professions, like they just make money and they're not carrying all of this. But it's actually a lot worse. You look at Gen Z, many of them, even millennials, to an extent, to your point, many of them are foregoing these things that were, again, tied to the American dream of owning a home and starting a family and being able to do this. And now they're just at the space where they're like, okay, if I'm going to have to carry these financial burdens, then I'm going to live life, right? And whatever
Yeah.
that means, right? It's no longer this sense of obligation of holding of like, oh my gosh, like it's almost like, if I could describe it this way, not a giving up, but it's almost like if this is the burden that I have to carry for this long, then how do I make the best of life, if you will?
Yes.
And so that's
Yeah.
actually shifted how they approach work, how they approach careers, how they approach everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I feel like people are just reclaiming their sense of existence because I think, at first glance, it's just like the natural instinct is to cry, to scream, to bang your head against the wall. Like, this isn't fair. I can't believe people did this to me. And to be clear, like all of those feelings are totally valid because it is the system at work as opposed to people just being dumb and irrational and bad with money. It's like people are set up for failure. It's not like they just went and racked up a ton of gambling debt, getting drunk at a Vegas casino. Like this was by design because of things like subprime lending, and people were just totally eyes shut to that because expecting these people to act with integrity like the way they used to. So no, I'm so when I hear people who are like, you know what, that debt is just it is what it is. And, some people like, I just do the bare minimum to keep it current because of credit. Others are like, I have given up all hope because I missed out on 10 years of getting to celebrate with my family, getting to, go to friends' weddings, like life milestones for the people that matter most to me. And I understand that not everyone, as of right now, is like just in a position to clear that financial hurdle. And yeah, they're just like, hey, life is a party. We may as well try to dance to it and dance our way through this. And I have no choice but to respect that attitude of dignity, right? Like, because I think people hear that, like, you respect people being reckless and irresponsible. I'm like, let's not judge, first of all. But what I'm saying I respect is that people have just decided like what matters to them. And again, knowing that student debt is it's a different kind of beast because you quite literally cannot get into the same situation with a mortgage or with a car. I mean, car maybe just depending on if it's like a really shady dealership. Credit card, sure, but it's like to rack up this level of debt. they're all too happy to get students hooked in this way because it's made them billions, right? I mean, we saw Sally and Mae get exposed for taking their whole team. They got flued out to Hawaii on the company dime, right? When their clients, their customers are, going into default and having to choose between putting freaking food on the table for their families and paying them back all this money. So, I mean, it's just the way that it's set up. I mean, the fact that lobbyists were successful in passing legislation in '04 to make student loans undischargeable by bankruptcy, it's just like there's literally no way to shake it but to either pay it off or die with it. So yeah, I think it's a tough spot to be in. And it just goes back to like why I get so riled up about making sure that not only do more people not getting into that spot, but also shining the light on these bad actors who have been hiding out behind the curtain and being like, y'all's time is up. Y'all got to get on with that. Like it's time for a new system and, just burn it down and start again.
Yeah, I love your passion. As it goes with money, right? And this is based on work that I've had to do personally, work that I've connected with other financial professionals. There's a piece around, I call it the technical aspect, right? Or the practical aspect of knowing how to make decisions around money or understanding how to read, that 15-page contract that they send you, even if it's student loans or it's a credit card or whatever the case may be. And then there's also the piece that we don't see, right? The mindset, the mental, the emotional, the psychological aspect around our attachments and the meaning that we give to money. And I think that, as we're thinking about how do we elevate women to the space where they are empowered with their money, that they can, make it, they can grow it, they can keep it, they can multiply it and whatnot. I feel like at the heart of all of this, it always starts with, what does that person really truly believe about themselves? Yes, there will always be external factors, but I think that when it comes to money and the way that we as a society have put this premium on what it means to have money and what it means to, be wealthy and whatnot. This is a generalization, but oftentimes the driving force behind us even moving in that space of going to get these degrees and accumulating this debt is this hope of, okay, this is going to be the thing that like gets me out, or this is the thing that differentiates me, or this is the thing that opens up more doors for me. And because that's our mindset and that's what we've been taught, it's sometimes easier to be blinded by, okay, but what does this really mean? It's almost like we're so engrossed in future self, right? Yeah. That we don't recognize how the present decisions are impacting. So we're buying time and we don't realize we're buying time because, hey, there's a hope of a bigger financial future. So many programs out there around, financial literacy. There's so many programs around, just kind of building your credit and like stuff like that, which are important because obviously we know from a financial literacy perspective, people need that. But I feel like there's a deeper work that's missing in terms of getting down to the psyche of individuals, whether, it's a younger age or even adults right now, to really understanding, identifying where we might have some money wounds that have been, generated or passed down to us from family members, identifying the areas or the moments in which we've given money a not so great meaning in our lives, and then subsequently made decisions that reflected that. So I'm curious in the programs that you run, do you do a lot of work around some of the healing around our money thoughts, our patterns and our beliefs?
Like 100%. And I was really intentional about integrating that, especially into the 35 to free curriculum. So to preface, we actually worked with, she's now departed. Unfortunately, she ended up having conflicts and couldn't stay on another year, but the incredible Deanna Scales, by day, she works as head of diversity, inclusion, and belonging at BuzzFeed, but she's also a finance pro. So she came on as a coach and actually helped us custom build out our curriculum. And we had meetings every week. And, we went through different drafts and iterations because I am very much a perfectionist, and I was like, I don't know money that well yet, so I'm trusting you for the content. But in terms of the structure, like I know the outcomes I want for our Prosperettes. I want them to leave this feeling like I can, like all the people, the naysayers that you brought up earlier on Twitter who love to holler out about, well, just pay it off like the rest of us and take responsibility, and they just don't get it. I want them to feel validated as they go through it. Like we're certainly holding them to a certain standard and saying, all right, like it may not have it started with them, but it ends with you. So we're training them to take that agency, and because then you have your power back when you're the one who's like, okay, I'm gonna get through this, I'm overcoming this. But certainly the healing piece comes with that. And so I really do like pride our whole team and our culture on being a source of support, because I'll tell you, like when I was starting my journey, solo, not as a prosperette, just like as an individual trying to put two and two together, I just turned to the guru. So many people do, Dave Ramsey. I woke up listening to his show. I used that as motivation to get through those dog days of, cleaning the gym and like working and suffering retail, like leading up to holiday season. And that just made me super clear on my why. But what I hated was the attitude of what's the word? Condescension, and just how he would be so quick to just tear people a new one if they even asked, do I keep aggressively putting money towards my debt, or do I treat myself? Well, do you have debt? You're not treating yourself. You're rice and beans and rice, and no steak in the budget, no fun, no this, no that. And basically life is beige and gray until you're debt free. And so my thing is, we've come up with something more like a debt tolerance where people can gauge where they fall on that. Because I think to say that everybody should just say like, to heck with that, I'm done with it. I mean, I personally am very debt intolerant, so I don't ever seek to have any more. And that's car, credit card, like everything short of a mortgage. And then once I can make enough, pay that down, and then I'm totally debt free. But some people are like, no, I don't mind leverage, and I don't mind putting things on a credit card and then, racking up points because I want to live a more credit-based lifestyle. So our thing is, I think part of healing is establishing your own identity and finding your voice. And we seek to be a space where that's possible and where people can feel like, oh, I can call my own shots and I can do a little bit of both. I can do what feels comfortable. I can try a new approach. So 100%, yes, that's very well entrenched into our methodology and in the programming.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because as a business owner, at least for me personally, because I had racked up so much debt coming out of school and like the first few years of, learning how to adult, I lived off of my credit cards, and I had gotten to a place where I wanted to buy a home, but my credit was so jacked up and I had
Mhm.
so much, defaulted. And something shifted. That desire to want to own a home is what kind of made me start to look at all of the stuff that I was ignoring. So I went through a process, I think it was about 2 years of, paying down charge offs and all this other stuff till I got to a point where I could buy a home. And then it was because, not that it was a little exhausting. It was a little emotionally exhausting to go through that process. But I got
Mhm.
to a point where I was just like, I am not messing with debt anymore. Like, no more, never again will I be entangled and da 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 da.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, I remember, coming across the conversation around leveraging, right? As you grow your business, you need capital, you need everything. And my mindset was, no, I'm going to work for it. I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to work for it. But it was almost like there was a part of me that needed to understand, okay, this version of you needed to go through that process and understand it in this capacity, in
Yes.
this environment. It's okay. And leverage, the past mistakes, if you will, to really look at how do you want to show up, or how do you want debt to play a role in your life today. And so
Mhm.
even that for me was another pivotal moment of going back and healing based on like the decisions and the ramen noodles, the years of ramen noodles I had to
Yes,
eat,
yes.
to recognize that, okay, I'm in a different place. I have different tools now, and I can move forward in a place that's a lot more conscious and aware of the decisions that I'm making. And I have resources, right? Like I didn't know, I mean, I knew about financial advisors like back when things were happening, but you don't think as a college student or fresh out of college, like, oh, I should have a financial advisor. No one's thinking that.
Mm-mm.
So I love the fact that you don't limit it to this narrow lane, like this is the only way that you can succeed, because we know there's, multiple ways to build wealth, to build financial stability, but that you really give people the option to explore what makes sense for me, because that's what's going to make it sustainable.
Right.
If people try to like go into this lane, they'll naturally, similar to the lottery effect, they will go back to their reset point. So I love that you've incorporated that into your program, and that you create that space for people to have that agency, be empowered, and make the decisions that they feel are right for them.
What, yeah, for sure. And part of it too, I don't know if you're familiar with Yaneli Espinal, Miss Be Helpful.
Mm-mm.
Oh gosh, she's a force in finance. She's been doing work in this realm for the better part of the last 5 years. And we've done, so many conversations like these. And we had a great dialogue in April as part of Financial Literacy Month. And yeah, we were just talking about, like breaking mentally out of those confines, and then also making it analogous to weight loss. She was like, I love that. Let's run with that. We just talked about, it's like, okay, it really is just, conscientiousness and stewardship. Because if you're following a certain, lifestyle when it comes to your physical wellness, if you have goals that you're serious about achieving, you don't have a ton of wiggle room to splurge on, cake and the desserts and, all the treats that get thrown your way. And it's like, but at the same time, if someone offers you an extra helping and you're like, you know what, I'm cool if I need, to like make up for this somehow, or if I'm just going to be a little bit further away from meeting my target. Like, okay, so now I'm down to 20% body fat next January as opposed to this October, right? Like just being flexible with yourself and giving yourself that grace to adjust with life, and to not be so married to hitting a certain milestone that you're depriving yourself in every way and it's no longer enjoyable. I mean, certainly, discipline is not always enjoyable, and it is a balance, but it's like that's where discernment comes in, to know when you're acting up and when it's like, all right, like you've fallen off the wagon and then you need to get serious again, versus I stay serious, I stay committed, I stay intentional, but I'm also human and I deserve to be able to, treat myself within reason. And if I need to adjust a goal, I can do that. And debt is really like getting in shape. It's like, okay, if I have a goal to be completely debt free by the holidays of next year, then that means I need to pay off X amount month over month. And then assuming nothing changes, either job loss or change of income. And in either scenario, again, it's an adjustment. Oh, I got a promotion. Great. That moves the timeline up 3 extra months. Or, oh, snap, my client didn't renew. So now I'm looking at maybe another 6 months. So I think it's just, yeah, like all about giving people that mental framework so that they know to be kind and patient with themselves, and they don't burn the heck out and then just be like, well, I'm a waste. I can't ever escape this. Like, I'm one of the unlucky few who will never make it happen. And we're here to remind people you absolutely can make it happen. Like, don't let those 30-year defaults, that they set you up for with these loans make you think that you have to spend a life like this. Our thing is like, the solution is always to make more money. And that's easier said than done, obviously. So it's like, we're here to just be the training wheels and to build people up as they tap into their potential to do that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I want to reiterate this, especially when it comes to money, when it comes to women. There's so much guilt and shame that's wrapped into our relationship with money, hidden underneath the surface, right? That it, again, you can give like all of the information, like, this is an asset, this is a liability, and all of that stuff. But if that person is unable to get the support that they need to get to the root of what were some of your initial conversations in the house around money? What were
Yeah.
some of the initial emotions that were elicited when it came to conversations about money? Are you asking about money? Are you asking for things? I think that there is just there's a need for healing. It may sound a little woo, but I think there's a part of it that goes into the practical and the tactical and the strategic aspect of how do we move forward and how we make decisions. But if we're not willing to look at each and every one of us individually and the meanings, the beliefs that we have attached to it based on what was given to us, it's almost like we can move forward, but it'll be in increments, very small increments, or we can move forward and then find ourselves retracting back. And then it also builds into that whole mindset. And you mentioned it before, right? Sometimes you can't out earn this debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even that mindset of just keep working, just keep working, just keep working, it keeps people on this hamster wheel. And the value and the quality of life that they get to experience is so much less than their potential. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate the work that individuals like Barbara Welch, who was on the show a few weeks ago, her focus is really around the good life. And it's really looking at holistically, what do you want to create? And then how do we address each one of these buckets? So for those of you who are listening, who, maybe from a student loan perspective, you have had some challenges or you're facing some challenges and really want to understand how can I, move out of this or what resources are available. Obviously, we'll link all of Briana's information in the show notes. So please connect with her. Please reach out, find the support that you need. And in the time being, before we get into like the actual links to get to it, I'm curious. I have 3 questions for you for our Blitz section here, and then we'll let you go. So as you think about everything that you've learned up until this point, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her some advice that you think would have been pivotal for her growth and her development, what might that be?
I would say specifically in the vein of educating myself, it's hard to like sum up in like a quick snapshot, but I think, where I was at 18, I was split the fence like, okay, do I stay at a local school and like basically the whole thing is paid for minus 20K? Do I go to this Ivy League school? And it would be do what is reasonable. Like don't do it to try to prove a point. Like do it for the right reasons. I think that's my quick soundbite. Do it being education and following an educational path for the right reasons.
Yeah, love that. And as you think ahead, as I believe that every day we get to build legacy, right? So as you think ahead and, you're looking back on your life, what do you want the narrative to be?
That she was not afraid to raise hell, because I love the fact that I've gotten to really do the work I'm doing by having a disruptive spirit. And just the fact that I can be that snag. I think about clothing, how sweaters and clothes don't fall apart usually by being like burned up as a whole. It's like one tiny snag, just, hooking onto something one good time is enough to unravel the whole thing over time. So I want my legacy to be that I was proud to be that snag in this destructive system.
I love that. I love that you identify with having a disruptive spirit. That's awesome. And then final question for you in this Blitz section, as you think about some books that have been helpful to you or supportive to you, or even, just from a financial literacy perspective or empowerment, are there any books that stand out for you?
So I haven't read any that have been like solely on money just yet. I mean, I did read Own It by Sally Krawcheck, who of course, co-founded Elevest. And I've been doing a lot more of following certain accounts when it comes to money. So I do have next on my read list the I Will Teach You book by Ramit Sethi, who is now having his moment on Netflix with the namesake documentary series. So even just from the preview that I've checked out so far, I know that's going to be a great read, but In terms of others, I'll go ahead and plug Yanelli. She's got Mind Your Money coming out May 30th. And, I've gotten a little bit of a teaser on that read too. So I know that there's great works being put out there. And I have like so many more on my want to read list, but I'd usually been reading about like general self-help and business building. So this is the year that I'm finally pivoting more into like getting into the nuts and bolts of finance reads.
Yeah. So on the self-help side, is there one book that stands out for you as like I got to go back to this multiple times?
Definitely, I would say a tie between So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport and The Power Broke by Damon John. And I think just identifying with my entrepreneurial inclination before I had any sort of framework for TPP and before I knew what any of this journey would entail, I just remember flipping through, especially the pages of Damon's book and being like, yes, like making something out of nothing and being hungry. And I knew I wasn't crazy. And, people are literally like in my family, friends, whomever, they're like literally laughing at me for working a real retail job despite having this Ivy League degree. But guess what? I know the path that I'm on, and I know that this is going to set me up for something. And even if I can't see it yet, it's like just that validation of people who have not just been through it, but are now shining examples of what happens when you stick it out and can come through on the other side. I was like, that's all I need to see is that there's hope here.
I love that. Thank you. And we will include these links to the in the show notes as well. So before I let you go, Bree, if as people are watching this or listening to this when it airs as the podcast and they want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to do so?
Yes. So I am all over, I call it linked Instagram. So both of those platforms are where you can find both me personally and then also creating content on behalf of the Prosperity Project. Because it sounds identical and it's hard to make this differentiation, make sure that if you do look us up there on our website, which is theprosperityproject.org, you're spelling prosperity with an A instead of an E. That was an intentional name change that I made within a couple of days of the founding because the original spelling was taken, but also it's a combination of prosperity and parity. And yeah, so those are our main links to, stay connected with us.
Awesome. Awesome. So we will definitely be sure to link that and then certainly, just continue to support the project because it is a nonprofit. I assume that you also receive donations for people who might be thinking, I'm not in that space, but I want to support this and I want to be a part of this, this movement or this disruption. They can donate as well, correct?
Indeed. Yes. We are a fully tax deductible 501c3 operating organization.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So everything will be in there. Briana, thank you again for this conversation. Thank you for your passion in literally breaking chains and rewriting, if you will, old rules that no longer apply or are no longer valid for this generation and certainly the generations to come. So thank you for being such a wonderful role model. Sometimes it's in the most negative, painful experiences in which, innovation is birth, but also purpose. And so it sounds like you have identified a avenue, if you will, or a lane in which you can, make an impact on this world. And so I'm excited to watch you flourish, watch you grow, watch you plow, and break some of these generational systems.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. And just again, thank you for being such a gracious host, both with amazing questions and then also fielding the snafus we kept running into earlier. I'm so glad that we were able to pull this off. I mean, the hour literally zipped by like that because, I could talk about this all day. So just thank you again for the platform and opportunity.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, be sure to connect with Bree. Send me any questions at support@sabinegideon.com. Have a great rest of the day. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you found today's conversation helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your life, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn @Sabine Gideon and send me a message, or feel free to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network, another powerhouse possibly, who you think might benefit from today's conversation. Lastly, as always, any links, any resources, or any upcoming training is included in the show notes, so be sure to check that before you leave today. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.